Hello everyone and welcome back to another session of Elden Ring PvP and another weapon showcase. Today we're taking a look at the Flowing Curved Sword. This is a weapon that is essentially the new Painting Guardian Sword, the new Monastery Scimitar, but improved and also worsened. And I'll get into the reasons for that in a few minutes here. That said, you can get this weapon at the Consecrated Snowfield being pulled by a hearse. You just have to kill the enemies and loot the chest. Easy enough, just don't go at night. The weapon itself, it's southwest of the inner Consecrated Snowfield brace. I'll have an image on screen showing its location. When you get the weapon, by default it will have Spinning Slash as its skill. As you can see, I've put on Double Slash. I feel like Double Slash was more beneficial for this weapon because it has more forward momentum. Spinning Slash is all well and good, but you already have a lot of spinning attacks, so forward momentum is kind of something this weapon needs, in my opinion. The weapon requires 9 strength and 17 dexterity in order to wield, and it weighs 3.5 units. I went with the Keen upgrade path because, again, that is the only one with an A scaling. Its base damage is 228, it has an E scaling in strength, and that A scaling is, of course, in dexterity. Now, when I mentioned this weapon being the new Monastery Scimitar, the new Painting Guardian Sword, I said it was better and worse. Clearly, the range is better. If you're familiar with those previous two, they're short. They're very, very short. This isn't the longest curved sword in its class, but it's not Painting Guardian Sword short, so it's an improvement in that regard. The R2s, they're fancy. As you can see, you've got a nice spin going on with them. They look good. And that's all well and good, but there's a big downside to the weapon, and that's that by default it doesn't have bleed. And that's fine. Not all weapons need to have that, but in the curved sword class, there are better options, and that's the unfortunate truth. That said, let's start off with the pros. All of the pros with this weapon, except for one, are standard to the weapon class. The running attacks are great for chasing people down, whether it's a running R1 or R2, they're great for chasing people down. The weapon's got some good speed to it. You can spam people with it if they don't understand how priority works, and you've broken their poise, well, they're going to have a bad time. And the damage on the weapon, it's decent for the curved sword class. It's kind of middle of the pack. It's not the best, it's not the worst, it's just smack dab in the middle. The big pro of the weapon is the fancy R2 attacks. They look good and they are satisfying to hit people with, they're satisfying to get kills with, but they're a bit of a challenge. And that's not a bad thing, per se, that they're a bit of a challenge, but it's not that good of a thing either. I would prefer if they had a bit more hyper armor on them. That would be great. If the weapon had more hyper armor on its R2s, it would be a much better weapon than it is. The big downside with the weapon is also the R2 attacks, though. The reason for that is that they are unlikely to fully combo. You're more likely to hit someone with one part of it, maybe two. It's unlikely that you hit someone with all 3 swings of the first R2. And the reason for that is because, first off, poise, second off, hyper armor, and thirdly, the range of the weapon. Most people will end up getting hit by that third attack because they don't expect the weapon to, keep attacking. And when they do, that's actually a good thing. The third attack in its fully charged R2 is the most damaging of them. The first 2 attacks, they'll typically hit around 100 damage, 130, somewhere in that range, whereas the third attack can hit upwards of 400. At a few points in this fight, you've seen me hit over 500 with that third swing in the attack. And that's great, because if people run into it, then, that's a good bit of damage. But when they run into it, in a lot of cases you'll end up trading. And at that point, was it worth taking the hit? It's questionable. Now, this weapon, like I had said, not really the best in its class, and the reason for that is because it doesn't build up any status effects by default. There are weapons in the class that do cause bleed buildup by default, and if you brought those weapons along a bleed upgrade path, then they would be even better at building up bleed. That makes sense. If you put this weapon on the bleed upgrade path, yeah, you could build up bleed with it pretty okay. especially with its R2 attacks, because they are a multi-hit combo. But again, you run into the issue of needing to hit all of the hits to build up that bleed, and you're sacrificing damage in the meantime. So it's one of those things that becomes kind of questionable of if it's worthwhile. So personally, I don't think it is. That's just my 2 cents on the matter. Let me know if you guys have a different opinion. If you've tried this thing on bleed, let me know what your experience has been. Because mine wasn't really all that great. At least in comparison to other weapons that can deal bleed damage that innately have that ability. So, as it is, it's not the worst weapon in the world. It's not the best. It's kind of a mediocre weapon, middle of the pack as far as curved swords are concerned in terms of damage and in terms of viability. Are there better options? Yeah. Do any of those better options have as fun or as satisfying of an R2 attack to land as this one? I'm going to go with no. The R2 attack is what makes this weapon fun to use. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Is the weapon enjoyable to use when you're using it? And I think it is. I think that's the best thing this weapon has going for it. Those R2 attacks are satisfying, and that is what makes or breaks a weapon. The satisfaction you get from using it. It could, it be better if you power stance them, dual wield them. Sure. You might have some new combos, but the moveset when doing that isn't unique. It's the standard curved sword power stance. If it had a unique power stance or a unique moveset when this weapon was in its left hand paired with a different curved sword, I think that would be quite nice. That would be a nice benefit to the weapon. But it's a pipe dream. It's not something that is in the game. It's not something that's going to happen. So it's not something that I really am worried about. The point is, the weapon is fun. When you land a fully charged R2, it's satisfying. And even if you don't, people don't expect it. So it does have that benefit where people will just run into your attacks pretty frequently. So it is what it is. Overall, a fun weapon to use, not the best weapon to use, but it's not always about being the best. It's about having fun while we're doing what we're doing. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you've enjoyed my ramblings on what makes weapons, fun and whatnot. I hope you will continue to enjoy the videos and are looking forward to what's coming next. Next on the list will be something. Possibly the Ice Friend Hatchet. I have an interest in seeing how that weapon works in PvP after seeing it in speedruns, so we'll see. Either way, thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you all next time.